We begin tonight with the fatal shooting of a woman in the U.S. city of Minneapolis by a federal immigration agent, which has generated angry reactions, but also polar opposite views about what exactly happened. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency, also known as ICE, had been undertaking an operation with more than 2,000 agents deployed in and around the city. The victim of the shooting has been identified as 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good. She was shot at during one such ICE operation while driving off in her car with agents trying to prevent her leaving. The Trump administration said she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over in an act of domestic terrorism. But the governor of the U.S. state of Minnesota, Tim Walz, who was also running mate for the Democrat contender Kamala Harris in the last presidential election, has accused the Trump administration of having immigration policies designed to generate fear and headlines. He said the immigration crackdown led to this death and that someone innocent had been killed. The mayor of Minneapolis has also strongly rejected the Trump administration's account of the shooting. Jacob Fry said the video of the incident directly contradicted assertions by the White House that the agent had shot Renee Good in self-defense.
We've been warning for weeks that the Trump administration's dangerous, sensationalized operations are a threat to our public safety, that someone was going to get hurt. Just yesterday, I said exactly that. What we're seeing is the consequences of governance designed to generate fear, headlines, and conflict. It's governing by reality TV. And today that recklessness cost someone their life. Let me be clear. Donald Trump and his administration may not care much about Minnesota. That's been pretty evident. But we love this state. We won't let them tear us apart. We'll not turn against each other. To Minnesotans, I say this: I feel your anger. I'm angry. They want a show. We can't give it to them. We cannot. If you protest and express your First Amendment rights, please do so peacefully, as you always do. We can't give them what they want. And from here on, I have a very simple message. We do not need any further help from the federal government. To Donald Trump and Kristi Noem, you've done enough.
There's a lot of information that is swirling around right now, and we collectively are going to do everything possible to get to the bottom of this, to get justice, and to make sure that there is an investigation that is conducted in full. But what we do know is that a 37-year-old woman is dead and that she was shot by ICE. They are already trying to spin this as an action of self-defense. Having seen the video of myself, I want to tell everybody directly, that is bull. There's little I can say, again, that'll make this situation better, but I do have a message for our community, for our city, and I have a message for ICE. To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis.
I want to start out by addressing the loss of life that we saw here in Minneapolis today. Any loss of life is a tragedy, and I think all of us can agree that in this situation it was preventable. ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism. It's very clear that this individual was harassing and impeding law enforcement operations. Our officer followed his training, did exactly what he's been taught to do in that situation, and took actions to defend himself and defend his fellow law enforcement officers. And we'll let the FBI continue the investigation to get it resolved. Since we have been here in recent weeks, we have arrested over 1,500 criminals.
Well, for more on this, I'm joined now on the line from New York by Arise special correspondent James Blue. Good to see you, James. So very different perspectives about what happened from the federal government and the city of Minneapolis. The Department of Homeland Security saying the officer fired in self-defense as Renee Good was trying to run down officers with her car. But this has been strongly disputed by the city's mayor, Jacob Fry, who called the ICE agents' behavior reckless and unnecessary. What do we know so far, and how do you assess the developments?
Well, Charles, what we know so far this morning, we have just learned that the federal authorities, the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, are refusing access for the state and local authorities. That's the Minnesota State Police, and that's the local Minnesota Police. They are not in a position to do investigations because they were not going to be given access to any of the evidence. And so they have both sort of withdrawn from the actual investigation. And so now the only people we have investigating will be the folks from Homeland Security. This is very much a case of you see what is happening based on what you believe should be happening. So what I mean by that is, if you believe that I should be in these neighborhoods collecting people who are here undocumented, you think it's a good thing. If you believe that I should not be in those neighborhoods collecting people who are undocumented, this is a bad thing and was actual reckless murder. I do not see any way how those views will be reconciled. President Trump was giving almost a 2-hour interview yesterday with the New York Times. During the interview, they actually played the video, and what was really telling about the video, he claimed, she was using the car as a weapon and whatever. They played the video, and it was very clear that was not the case, and he was sort of left speechless. This is a real sort of division point. It's a real reckoning point, because in this very divided country, people are seeing this very, very differently. And, I think one of the things that everyone's worried about are potential protests. I'm here in downtown Manhattan in New York City. There was a morning vigil. There's going to be protests later this afternoon. There were vigils and protests across the country, including in Minnesota. But this is a real test. Can and will ICE continue in these neighborhoods? And we all knew something like this could happen, and it has finally happened. An innocent party, has been killed in the sort of ICE raid attempt.
Indeed, James, and this is obviously, as you said there, an extremely high-profile incident. The logical thing to ask is, what would you expect to see happen next in legal terms? But I mean, the obvious thing, as you pointed out earlier, an investigation perhaps to determine whether criminal charges are appropriate. But you've already said that the local officials are being blocked from the evidence. I mean, presumably ICE agents are not above the law, and if they commit a crime, they should be subject to the jurisdiction of the police department in the area where they committed the crime.
Yeah, that's what we would expect, that, if you commit a crime in a particular area, that you would be subject to the local laws of that jurisdiction. I mean, Charles, one of the challenges of having the Homeland Security team investigate is that just shortly after the incident, the Homeland Security Secretary issued a statement saying that it was self-defense and supporting the officer who actually killed Ms. Brown. And the president did as well. And so it's very hard for me to understand how people within an agency where your boss has already said this was self-defense, how do you sort of investigate that, potentially coming up with claims and findings that might counter those that your boss has already given? I think this is a very, very sort of volatile issue. The place where the shooting happened are just a few miles from where George Floyd was killed. And so, there are a number of issues sort of simmering in this. And I think some are worried that if things go off, if things sort of get to riot or real sort of deep protest level, that it would prompt perhaps President Trump to do more, possibly issue the anti issue warnings and issue orders that would allow the U.S. military and or allow the National Guard to come in.
I mean, James, we here on Arise from, well, this part of Arise are obviously not in America. We're looking from the outside in. But, I mean, is America transforming into something else under the Trump administration? I mean, you mentioned this being a symptom of how deeply divided the U.S. is politically, that blame for this tragic incident is being apportioned in starkly different directions.
Completely different directions, Charles, based on what you believe should be happening. And, just this week, if you think about the Saturday raid in Venezuela, bringing the President Maduro to the United States, the seizure of the ships in the North Atlantic, the announcement that all of Venezuela's oil is going to come to the U.S. There are real shifts happening here, seismic shifts happening here, and it's happening at such a fast, rapid rate. It's very much exhausting. And so I think it is sort of that exhaustion point that the Trump administration feels that they can actually do things and sort of get away with it without much injury and without much consequence. However, this incident in particular, I think, has really struck a nerve because she was the single mother, a widow of a 6-year-old child. And I think, the idea that she was there supporting some of her neighbors and to be killed as a bystander seems particularly callous. And the fact that the local authorities, the people that this woman answered to, the people who were responsible for her care in Minneapolis and in Minnesota are no longer party to the investigation does seem very, very, very troubling.
Indeed, it does. And is there a sense, James, that these ICE agents don't seem to be behaving lawfully? Because we've heard that they don't produce warrants and they often snatch people from their cars or from bus stops, and that they're arresting people who want to follow the legal method of becoming citizens through the courts and picking up people who have work permits, etc. I mean, it sounds like a horror show.
Yep, it does sound like a horror show. And I think part of what ICE is doing is to try to intimidate people so that they self-deport. And they're also picking up American citizens and sending them overseas. So just a bit of background. ICE really needed to increase the number of agents. And so what they did last fall was reduce the requirements. They lowered the requirements needed in order to become an ICE agent. And so because of that, there are lots more people in the Homeland Security ICE division who are not as qualified as previous agents. There were large bonuses awarded to people who signed up, and because what they wanted to do was just sort of flood the zone. Well, I think in many ways this is this is a consequence of that flooding, and I'm hopeful that the death of a woman bystander will in some way get Homeland Security to review what they've done. But yes, their tactics have been absolutely callous. So people who are here on all sorts of visas have to show up in court periodically. And now what they're doing, if you're showing up in court and you sort of have a case that's being adjudicated, even if your case hasn't completely finished or been finalized, they are finding a way to arrest people in court. After they finish their proceedings, people are being arrested and sent to their home countries from the court. And so those people who are showing up in court are absolutely trying to do things legally, and that actually has very little store for the ICE agents who are just trying to get the numbers and just trying to get as many people out as they can.
Well, we're going to be watching that story as it continues to evolve very closely here on Arise News. But let's turn to the other big story, James, out of the US today, which is getting attention globally, and that is President Trump ordering that the US pull out of and stop funding 66 international organizations, nearly half of them United Nations bodies. I mean, he's deemed them as operating contrary to the interests of the US. Tell us more, because he seems to think they are globalist and inefficient.
So I think one of the themes that when we look at this week in sort of US history and try to analyze and catalog it, this was the week where the Trump administration has really decided that unilateralism is the way. The whole kind of concept of a global order, the whole concept of working with partners, the whole concept of being in conversation with people, even though you may disagree with them, both on the tactics and the goals. The Trump administration has just decided that they're not going to do that anymore. And so these bodies that they've stepped down from are all sort of UN-type bodies that were sort of all part of a global effort to solve any number of problems. And the US participation was certainly partly financial, but it also just sort of gave it standing and sort of international credibility. Oh, the US is involved. Russia's involved, China's involved. And so now that just is not going to be the case. And what's very interesting is that the Trump administration has decided, based on ideology, based on sort of the goal of these organizations, that they're simply not going to participate and they're going to draw back. And that just seems to have a really big sort of political push. They're trying to push an agenda. And the agenda is America first. And not only have they pulled out of these organizations last week, they significantly cut the budget of funds that the United States is providing to UN agencies globally. And so that's a 1-2 punch, which is a real indicator that the US is much, much less concerned about the functioning and the viability of the United Nations and of the sort of global order as we know it.
So, I mean, are his actions likely to face legal challenges? Because I understand many groups in America and individuals see it as an attempt to destabilize global cooperation.
Well, yes, I do believe that there are a number of groups who are opposed, but Charles, I think one of the things that we really have to look at is the president is really, more than any other president in the past, he's really sort of concentrating power, he's exercising power, and he really is sort of becoming an imperial president. I am not sure, and I've asked a few people, what the actual challenge would be, because presidents do have a lot of authority to move the U.S. in ways that he wants to do it, and he seems to be doing it. The issue is whether he needs to, whether he wanted to sort of make it permanent, he would have to get legislation passed, and I don't think that would ever happen. And so January 20 in 2029, if we were to have a president of a different party or a president of a different stripe, he or she would be able to have the U.S. rejoin these organizations. But that, to me, is such an indicator of how unstable things are. You know, if the U.S. has 4 years with someone like Trump and then 4 years with Biden, and that flip-flopping, I think, is also a way to undermine and cause disorder. And so I think this is all very systematic, it's very planned, and they are really trying to create a situation where U.S. unilateralism becomes the norm, and part of that is trying to react against all the upset against the United States among other countries.
James, I want to thank you very much indeed. Great analysis from you, putting things in perspective and letting us, the international folk, understand better what's going on in America, in spite of the biting cold where you are, because I can see that it's quite cold there. But thank you, mate. We appreciate it. James Blue is Arise special correspondent. He was talking to me there from Manhattan in New York City.